If you know how to have mutually validating conversations with someone, there is no problem you can't solve, as long as the other person isn't toxic, because remember, the rules don't apply to those. But I work with a lot of couples who are struggling in their marriages. And if they know how to have a mutually validating conversation where both people leave this conversation feeling cared about, honored, respected, and validated, there's no problem you can't work out. So this is powerful stuff, and it's so simple. So I'm going to give you an example by telling you how I handled the space invader guy, because I tried to ignore that behavior, but after a while I realized this is a bigger issue, because as a married woman, it makes me uncomfortable. And I would bet that I'm not the only person that works with him that he's making feel uncomfortable. And I decided it might be more loving for me to talk to him and help him change that behavior than to ignore it. But I was scared, because you know what will happen if this goes south, right? If I handle this badly, he's going to get offended, and there's going to be a problem in our working relationship from here on out. And that's going to put maybe my job in jeopardy. So I got to handle this right. So I used this formula. Now the first two steps are things that you do before you even talk to the person. So you'll notice step number 1 says, I will choose to see this person as the same as me. And let me explain why this is so important. Remember we talked about how fear makes you see people as better than you or worse than you? If I see this man as an annoying coworker, am I going to see him as less than me? Do you think he will feel that in the way I approach him? Guarantee you, we can't hide that. It comes across in your energy. So I've got to make sure when I sit down to talk to him, he knows that I see him with respect, that I honor who he is, and I see him as an equal across the table from me. Now, this is really important at home. Even when I'm talking to my children, I talk to them as equals. I give them the respect to see them as the same as me. And you know what that does? I get respect back. Because when you give it, you get it. So we want to make sure every conversation we have, we're seeing this other person as an equal. And sometimes that's hard when you're mad at the person and you've kind of seen them as the bad guy. You got to take a minute to get in a place where you're going to choose to honor and respect their intrinsic value as a human being and love them, validate them, and respect them. Step number 2. I'm going to set my stuff aside, and I'm going to explain what I mean by your stuff. Your stuff is everything you think and feel. All of your ideas and opinions, your beliefs and values, your fears and concerns, everything you think and feel is your stuff. And they have their stuff. Now, if I start out a conversation and it's all about my ideas and how I feel and what I think, what kind of message do you think that sends?
That you're right. You're wrong.
Yeah, how do you think they would respond to that?
Defensively.
Yeah. I mean, nothing makes their walls go up faster, because basically you have a neon sign that says, this is all about me. And so, of course, they're going to feel the need to defend and protect themselves. And that's not what we want. So before I decided to talk to this man, I'm going to call him Walt. That wasn't his real name, but I had to make sure that my focus was going to be on making Walt feel valued. That was my number 1 focus. My number 2 thing was this agenda to talk to him about his behavior. But I had to set that completely aside up front so that I could focus on him. Okay? Then step number 3 is I'm going to ask him questions about his stuff, and I'm going to listen and validate. And you guys, his stuff is what he thinks and feels. So those questions, I asked him if we could visit for a minute. And I said, well, tell me how you feel about our working relationship. Am I showing up for you well enough? Tell me how you feel. And I got him talking. And we want to give this other person a lot of time to talk. Because the more time that you spend listening to them, the more valued they feel. We don't do that for people we don't care about. Have you noticed that? I bet everybody in the room has tried to talk to somebody who's kind of brushed you off. Showing someone you're willing to take your time to really listen and understand how they feel, there's nothing that makes them feel more valued. And guys, nothing makes your wives feel more valued than listening to how she feels. You guys are going to use this at home, okay? Now, notice that I said validate them. That does not mean you agree with anything they say. Because there's a lot of these conversations where when I ask them how they feel and they start telling me, I disagree with everything they say. This happens a lot with my teenagers. Because I use this. Tell me how you feel about you going on this trip with your stupid friends that always get in trouble. What's your, what are you thinking about it? And they tell me, and I think they are up in the night. I mean, I can't believe I raised a child this dumb. So, you don't have to agree to validate. But when I say validate them, I am talking about honoring and respecting their right to be where they are and see their world the way they see it. Because we've got to give that to everybody. That's what they see. It's all they know. So a lot of times the only statement that I can use is, I totally understand how you could feel that way in your screwed up little head. But I don't say that last part, I just think it. I totally understand how you can feel this way about it. Now you guys are going to use that on each other in the office, right? And you're going to know exactly what you're up to.
The screwed up head part. I don't even have to practice that. I got that down pat.
Okay, but does it make sense why when we say, I totally understand how you could feel that way, it's validating them? And we have to give that to people. Because it's validating them that makes them feel safe with you and their walls come down and they're not defensive. And that's why I like to spend a lot of time listening, because the more time I spend there, more of those walls come down and I build this relationship of trust with this person. And that's what happened with Walt. I really let him talk. And I kept saying, well, tell me more about that. Tell me, what makes you feel that way. And then I kept asking him, is there anything else I could do to show up for you? Isn't that incredibly validating? I'm in a place of giving to him. This isn't all about me. Okay, now step number 4 is actually a rule that I want you to make in your own head, in your life, that from now on, after this moment, you will never tell people what you think. Give them advice. Tell them your story. Make suggestions, unless you've asked permission first. Okay, those permission questions, this is like one of the most amazing communication secrets I could teach you. When you say, would you be open to some suggestions on that? And they have to say, sure. You are honoring and respecting them at a really deep level. Does that make sense? When you give advice to people, would you be open to some advice? I use this with my teenagers a lot. Would you be open to letting me share a couple things you might not be seeing in this situation? And they have to say yes. Now, often they don't. They say no. And I have to honor it. If they say no, I really don't want to hear your suggestions, I have to say, okay, then good luck on your own. No problem. Now, the funny thing is, a lot of times they come back because it bugs them that they don't know what you were going to say. They come back and say, okay, maybe I do want to hear that. But even if they don't, by honoring that they're not in a place right now that they can deal with what you were going to say, and you honor that, you build a relationship of trust that's going to pay off later. And next time they probably will let you speak, because they know you honor and respect them. So these permission questions are huge. So with Walt, I asked him if he was in a place today that he would be open to just a couple suggestions that might make his working relationships with people better. Would you be open to that today? And he was. And he said, absolutely. Now he was there because I spent all that time before, showing up for him. I had a client on the phone the other day who said, I tried your formula and it totally didn't work. And I'm, okay, explain to me. Yeah, I had my say and then I told them I wanted to hear their say. Okay, we need to get the paper back out because you've got the steps It doesn't work. You have to earn it first. And then when you ask permission, they'll say yes. Now, the last step, step number 5, is just some hints about when you finally get to share your stuff, how to do it the right way. So you want to use I statements, not you statements, and you want to focus on future behavior, not past. And let me explain why. If I start out, well, you make people uncomfortable. You stand too close when you talk to them. Last week when we had that conversation, I was so uncomfortable talking to you then. I'm going to totally ruin everything I just did. Because a couple reasons. You statements are accusational. Speak from where you are. Don't try to speak to where they are. And if I focus on past behavior, this is stuff Walt can do nothing about. He cannot change how he behaved last week. So I'll tell you what I said to him. I said, Walt, I apparently have some personal space issues, and I think a lot of women working, in a business environment kind of feel that way. And I just really appreciate it if people will kind of honor that and kind of give some room when they come talk to me. And I wondered, moving forward, if you would be willing to kind of be sensitive to that for us. Is that something you would feel good about moving forward? Can you tell how much better that would go over? It's pretty significant.
Yeah, instead of get out of my personal space.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I can smell what you had for lunch a week ago.
Definitely means you're too close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it takes a little more work. And you know what? You have to care about people to be willing to take the time to do it that way. And that doesn't that tell us a lot about whether somebody cares about us? It does. And what I want you to get out of today is you get to choose in every situation you're in to be in fear and all about you and be defensive, or to show up for people. And now you know what to do and how to do it. Now, there's one other communication trick on this form. Oh, wait, I gotta tell you one other thing. Walt was so gracious when we had the conversation. He apologized, and absolutely he would be willing to do that. And when he left my office, I thought, yeah, I handled that perfect, no problem. But in the coming days, I got a little coldness from Walt. I did. And I could tell he kind of didn't talk to me unless he had to. And I'm thinking, great. After all that, we kind of had this reaction. But this is the thing. We can't control how anybody else processes what happens in their life. Our job is to choose to show up with love. And then we have to kind of let go of how they choose to process it. And it took him a little while to kind of process his way through it. And I think it probably hit that chord of I might not be good enough for him. And that took a little while, and I couldn't react to that. I had to keep being loving and kind and just show up with caring towards him. And then after a while, he got over it. But I just want to mention that because just because you handled it right doesn't guarantee that the person is in a place to take it well. But that part's not your problem. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That's a good point, because I can see myself going, oh, I'm so sorry, you okay? You don't come talk to me anymore, I take it back, you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in a relationship.
So be in trust that that whole thing happened to serve him, and you've got to let him experience it the way he needs to experience it, and just let go of it.